This is Gary Swanson with Americans Remembered, interviewing John Matthew Kraly, John, at his home in Kansas City, Kansas, on March the 3rd, 2008. John served in the Army during World War II. He was in the 25th Infantry Division, the 35th Infantry Regiment, Company G. He was a scout. His final rank was Private First Class. John was born August the 31st, 1924, served from June of 1943 to September 10 of 1945. John is the holder of a number of medals and ribbons, including the Purple Heart, the Philippine Liberation Medal with 1 battle star, the Asiatic Pacific Medal, and the Victory Medal. John, where did you grow up as a kid?
After what?
Where did you grow up?
I grew up on Strawberry Hill.
Just a few blocks from here.
That's right. It's down around St. John's School.
Yes.
Out on 4th Street.
Yes.
St. John's the Baptist.
Just a few blocks
Yeah, we used
from
to
here.
we used to play around there.
Yes. What was your dad's name?
And we used to go down to the Missouri River swimming.
Yes. What was your daddy's name?
My dad's name was Ilya.
Ilya Kraly.
Yeah.
And your mother and her maiden name?
My mother's name was Mary Rozgay, R-O-Z-G-A-Y.
And did they both grow up on Strawberry Hill?
Right.
Were both of them born in this country?
They was born in Croatia,
Both of them.
both of them.
Were they married over there, or did they come over here separate?
They came here. My father, they were married over there. My father came here first, and then he got a job, got enough money, then he sent for my mother.
Where did your dad work?
He worked for the railroad.
Which one?
I think it was called ART, American Refrigeration Transportation. I believe that was it.
Well, there were many, many people who came over from the old country and worked at the railroad. So you are a first generation American.
Right.
You are.
Yeah.
Did you ever meet your grandparents, grandma and grandpa?
Do what?
Grandma and grandpa. Did you know them? Your grandparents. Your grandparents.
No, I didn't know my great parents. Although my folks, a lot of my kids have gone over there. In fact, there's a picture of us. You want me to show you this?
In a little bit.
Picture
Later.
Where the church where my mother and dad were born is a village called Malapaka.
Malapaka in Croatia.
Yeah, that's right. It's up there by right below the border of Austria, of what they call Slovenia. The church is still standing there, and my daughter, one of my nieces, used to be mayor of this. Carol Stu Marinovich. That's my niece.
That's your niece, mayor of Kansas City, Kansas.
Yeah. Yes, she was mayor of Kansas City, Kansas.
How many brothers and sisters did you have?
I had 6 sisters and 4 brothers.
There were
11 of us together.
11 of you all together.
Yeah.
And how many of your brothers served in World War II?
All of us went in World War.
All 5?
Not in World War II. 2 of us served in World War II, and 3 served in Korea.
And how many of you were injured?
Do what?
How many of you were injured?
3 of us.
3 of you were injured.
Yeah.
But you all survived.
Yeah.
Were you the oldest of the 11 children, or the youngest?
I was next to the oldest. My brother Charlie was the oldest. Then me, then my brother Joey, then Eddie and Albert.
How many of your brothers and sisters are living today?
All my, three of my brothers are still alive, and I just have one sister that's alive.
So 5 of you.
Yes.
Where did you go to grade school?
Do what?
Grade school.
Grade school, I went to Bancroft at grade school. I was on 5th and Split Log.
Did you go on to high school?
No, I didn't go to high school.
So you quit school,
Yeah.
and then where did you go to work?
No, I started, like I said, I started going to the, learn a trade. The government had that school at that time. You could learn machinist, whatever you were, you know, they had different thing. Tinsmith thing that I just took up welding.
So you took
It was
up
a
welding,
national youth organization.
National Youth Organization,
Yeah.
and then you went to work. Where did you go to work?
If I went to the Fruhoff Trailer Company, which was located down in Fairfax.
Down in Fairfax.
Right.
And so, how long did you work with them before you went into the Army?
I worked for them, let's see, approximately, oh, I'd say about 9 months, 10 months before I went in the Army. We was making Army, most of the work for that time was done, they were making Army trailers,
Yes.
and I was welding on them.
So, did you get drafted or did you enlist?
I was drafted.
Uh-huh. And where did you get sworn in? At
I was supposed to be drafted in September, but everybody else was gone. I went up to the draft board. I said, I want to go in now. So they said, okay, we'll send you on the next one. So I got drafted early.
Where did you go to basic training?
Camp Roberts, California.
Had you ever been away from home before?
Yes.
So you'd done a little traveling around
Yes.
before.
Yes.
Were you
I served some time in what they call CCC, the Civilian Conservation Corps.
and where was that?
I spent 6 months out Heber City, Utah.
In Heber City, Utah, in the CCC.
That's right.
So you got some discipline there and some training there.
Yes.
That was before you went into the service.
Yes.
Do you remember, were you the first one of your brothers, your other brother, to go in to the Army?
No, my brother Charlie was the first to go in,
Uh-huh,
and then I went in.
uh-huh. Do you remember the day that you kissed your mama goodbye and shook your daddy's hand and went away?
I sure do.
Was that emotional?
Yeah. I thought I was going to catch a cab to go to the Union Station, and I had my hand on the taxi door. My dad came out. He says, "Hey, Johnny." I said, "What, Pop?" I turned around. He pointed his finger at me. He said, "Don't disgrace the family."
Well, you didn't.
He said, "Don't disgrace the family."
How about your mama? Was it emotional for her mom?
Well,
for her?
She didn't want to see me go, but everybody else was going.
And so it was your, if you hadn't, it was your duty.
Charlie was already in the service.
Yes.
Yeah.
How
Like
did
I
you
said,
get?
he was with the heavy bomber as a radio man.
Was he in the Pacific or in Germany, or was he in Europe?
Yeah.
Uh-huh. Flying out of England?
Do what?
He was flying out of England?
B-17s.
B-17 radio
Yeah.
operator
Radio operator.
flying from
Yeah.
England.
Yeah,
with the 8th Air Force.
yeah.
So how did you get along in basic training? Did you do a good job? Basic training.
Bedford was tough. Uh, I thought they were going to kill us. It was day and night.
They were just...
See, it was just like school. You had a week of this, a week of that, week of bayonet training, week of this, you know what I mean? A week of that. And they worked you.
But they made them...
Every morning we woke up at 5 o'clock, scrubbed the floors, we moved in beds around, you know what I mean? And you'd wake up, they'd give you 5 minutes for reveille, roll call, you know what I mean? You had to get dressed, put on your clothes and be out there, and then the commander to call a roll call. To first platoon, all President counted for, sir, so on down the line. Then we went in and cleaned up the barracks, then we ate breakfast. And then after breakfast, we started, we went out to what we were supposed to do. First thing we learned was the manual of arms, you know what I mean? Covered the inspection of arms and everything else. And close order drill, you know. It was back and forth, and you know. So, and then we went to the rifle range. And then from the rifle range, you learned the rifle, you learned how to fire the carbine, the light machine gun, and the BAR, Browning automatic rifle. You fired all of them and learned to take them apart. You had to take them apart, learn how to take them apart and everything else. And also we learned the 60 millimeter mortar, how to use a 60 millimeter mortar, because it was on tripods and it had things that you had a bevel to sight the thing on. All the mortars, they put aiming stakes in front, and that's what you aimed on, what they call the aiming stake. And so you had these two knobs that you pressed. It was on a tripod, the 60 millimeter mortar.
So they worked you pretty hard.
Yeah, and the 60 millimeter mortar, the thing about it is this: if there was it had 60 millimeter mortar had two safeties. One safety you pulled off on the nose, you dropped it down. The other safety was like a little screw in the bottom. When that shell hit the bottom, they loosened that screw and it removed the tube. When they left that tube, it was armed.
So after basic training, where did you go?
Basic training, I say we got on a ship to New Amsterdam. And first stop, we went to New Caledonia, and destroyers went ahead of us, taking us up there. We were unescorted. We didn't have no, what to call it. We went unescorted.
You didn't have an escort.
That's right.
Because it was a Dutch luxury liner.
It was a Dutch luxury.
And so it was traveling faster
Yeah.
than the German submarines, so you didn't have to have an escort.
Right. We didn't know where we were going. You know, we had no idea. We headed north and south of destroyers picked us up, took us up. Then south of Guadalcanal, there's always Japs at submarines there. The sailors used to call it Torpedo Junction.
Yes, a lot of Japanese submarines, and Guadalcanal was our first big...
They sunk a lot of Japs submarines there. But the sailors used to call it Torpedo Junction.
Did you go into Guadalcanal then? Had the Marines already taken Guadalcanal?
The fighting on Guadalcanal was already over. But the 25th Division had just finished off the last strong point, what they call Gifu strong point. And the Japanese, the last of them made a big banzai attack. They all came rushing out, but they were wiped out. I don't know, a couple of hundred of them.
Were you a replacement? Were you a replacement
I was a replacement,
For-
casualty replacement.
for the 25th?
They had a camp where they placed. And then when somebody needed replacements, they would call out your name. Well, I was only there about 4 or 5 days, and they'd call up my name, the sergeant's coming, you guys are coming to Company G. And they told us where we were going and everything else, and they got us all, there was 8 of us, went to Company G.
Okay.
Got 2 of my friends from Kansas City here went to Company E and Company M. We got split up. And so they briefed us on the fighting. They says, don't surrender because they'll kill you anyway. He says, they told us the only good Jap is a dead Jap. He says, don't surrender, they'll kill you anyway. He says, and this is in Hollywood, they won't all be up in the trees. Most of them are on the ground, dug in. That's what the sergeants were briefing us, telling us how to fight.
Still in
They said,
Guadalcanal?
If you think you see something, don't hesitate. If you don't even see it, fire, because he who hesitates is dead.
Now, did you go into combat right away?
Well, not right away. We was waiting for war. A couple of times we got all set to go. I thought we were going to go up to this one island. I forgot exactly what the name of it was. We got on a ship and they took us off. Again, they took the island so they didn't need us, you know. So we waited around, and then they took the island of New Georgia. They were fighting for Munda Airfield, but they took that, and then they decided not to fight Colombagera, where there was thousands of 10,000 troops, go around and cut them off to Bella La Bella. That's where we went. We cut around, cut them off. And the Japs were trying to, we had control of the air. There was no Jap ships in the air area. They would hide along the shores, and they were evacuating by barges. That's where those PT boats came in. They were hunting down those barges.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Where did you go into combat for the first time?
It's Bella.
Mm-hmm. Do you remember that first day of combat, and you knew you were going to be shooting at somebody, and somebody's going to be shooting at you?
The sergeant told us, watch me for directions, you know what I mean? Sergeant Clawwater. He said, watch me for directions now. So, but we followed his directions, you know.
Were you scared?
You don't have time to be scared. When you get, the only time you're scared is when you have to wait. And every night was like a ritual. You'd fix your bayonet and straighten out your shovel. You'd always dig in. And waiting, if they was always trying to infiltrate. So in case there was hand-to-hand fighting, you know what I mean? You'd have your bayonet on, and you had your shovel, anything to fight with in hand-to-hand combat, you know what I mean? They would always try to infiltrate, and they always fought at night. They never fought during the day. They always fought at night.
Did you at Bella, did you have any hand-to-hand combat?
No, there was no hand-to-hand combat on Bella. They were just trying to get away with.
Yes.
And we were just hunting them down.
Trying to evacuate.
Yeah.
After that, where did you go?
After that, with Bella La Bella, we stood on Bella, make sure till the middle of I guess it was November or someplace. We didn't know where we were going. So a lot of guys had malaria. The funny thing about it is, everybody had to prevent having malaria. You had to take what they called an Ativan tablet. It wouldn't prevent, but it would knock it down, you know what I mean? But the first ones that came were uncoated, so it'd turn your tongue yellow. You'd have those guys walking around with yellow tongues. Well, then they started coating them. Well, that prevented from your tongue getting yellow. But the thing about it is, you look like a Chinaman. It started to make it turning your skin a different color, you know. So you would be perspire. You'd walk with hand. You look at your hand. It was like gold dust from that Ativan that you were taking. Everybody carried Ativan on their gun belt. Mm-hmm. On their on your belt you carried bandages. If you were wounded, you rip open that bandage. You carried sulfamilamide powder. That's what they used for wounds at that time, was sulfamilamide. Mm-hmm. They used to sprinkle it on. That was used extensively. And so we had this, and also we had this halazone tap, water purifying pills, you know. If you took water was a little dirty, you dropped one and shook it up, and then after wait 20 minutes, then you could drink. Mm-hmm. If it was real dirty, you threw 2 in it, and if it was real bad, you threw 3 in a minute. Then it tasted like you're drinking iodine.
So after Vella La Vella, where did you go?
We didn't know where we were going to. They took us back down the Guadalcanal. Then a lot of guys had malaria. They were sick, so they took us down to New Zealand, Auckland, New Zealand. Took us down to Auckland, New Zealand. That's right on the northern tip. They had the Army rest camp on the northern tip, and 200 miles south, there was Wellington. They had the Marine rest place. Marines rested there, and we stood there. We stood there till about 1st of February. We got there
1st of February, 44?
We got there by November 15th or 20th.
44.
Yeah. The only thing about what we call it, they couldn't make the beer there fast enough. We was drinking the beer. The pubs were always loaded. We were stationed near a town called Autahuhu. That was a Maori name. Maoris were like Indians when the British came there, but they were called Maoris. And these New Zealanders, we used to call them Kiwis, because the national bird was a bird can't fly, called a Kiwi. We used to call them Kiwis, you know what I mean? They were very friendly to us. They were thankful that we saved their country, because if we'd lost Guadalcanal, goodbye, you know what I mean? And so we stood there. We stood there till around February 1st. Then we went back up to New Caledonia to get new equipment. We had old equipment. We got all new equipment, you know what I mean? And then the Cannon Company had those old 75s. They got equipped with what they call M7s, the track vehicle with a 105 motor. And all the other guns were brought in where it was new stuff. Was from 75, it went to 105s. You know what I mean? Everything was new, you know.
So then where did you
They
go?
even brought in I knew what a bazooka was. I shot one, but we never did have one till we came back. Then we were practicing with that bazooka. You know what I mean? And then they got us on a ship. They were fighting on Bougainville, and the Japs almost overran the island, so they were going to put us on ships to take us up to Bougainville to help the 37th and the Marechal Division up there. But they stopped the attacks, they took us back off the ship again, you know. And so we waited around, then we waited around, it was getting set for the big one. And at that time, we weren't under the command of MacArthur. Who had command of the Solomon Islands was Admiral Halsey. MacArthur had nothing to do with the Solomon Islands. Over there, they used to call MacArthur Dugout Doug. That was his nickname, Dugout Doug. So, but Halsey did a good job. Yes, he really did a good job. He was leaving us in October. We were going to go making ready for the invasion of the Philippines, and we had a big parade for him. So he was going back to the Third Fleet. All the Solomons was taken and everything else, so everything north of that was under MacArthur's command. We then went into what they called the Sixth Army under General Kruger. He was a great guy. Great guy, General Kruger.
Did you go into Leyte in the Philippines?
In Leyte? No, we didn't go. We didn't go into Leyte. We bypassed Leyte. First, we went up to. We didn't go all the way, just up to what's called. We stopped first at Admiralty Islands. They thought they might need some help there. It was on the island called Manus. They was waiting to see what was going to happen, you know, about the fighting and the fighting on up in Hollandia and on an island called Biak. So they didn't know where they were going to be needed. We were still on ships waiting, you know what I mean? And so they found out that they made the invasion of Leyte. They found out we weren't going to be Leyte, so they sent us up to Luzon. We made the invasion of Luzon. We went around and landed on what they call the Indian Gulf by a little bitty town called San Fabian. And it was so, when we made the invasion, it was so foggy you couldn't see a hand in front of your face. You know, we climbed over the cargo net down into the LCVP, what they call landing craft vehicle and personnel. It would carry a truck or a platoon of riflemen. And I was on the forward, I was always on where the ramp was. And the coxswain couldn't drop the ramp. There were two bolts that you had to pull on each side. He'd say, pull the bolts, and he dropped the ramp. We couldn't even see the shore. It was so foggy. I could hear the churning of the LCVP till we hit the ground. Then the coxswain said, drop the ramps. You know, start pull the bolts, and the sergeant pulled the bolts from the other side. Woof, the ramp went down. And it was so foggy that you couldn't even hardly see. Traces were flying over our heads. The Japs couldn't see us, and we couldn't see them, you know.
How many guys, you were in on the invasion day one, right? You were on D-Day at Leyte.
Yeah.
The first day.
Yeah. Well, on Luzon.
On Luzon, I mean.
Yeah.
Luzon.
We landed by this town called San Fabian.
How many guys did we land? How many infantry divisions did we put ashore, and the Marines as well?
How many divisions did we have in
Luzon?
On Luzon? Well, the Luzon division was made with was first made with the 6th Infantry Division, the 43rd Infantry Division, 37th, and the 25th. Now the idea of that was landing on the Iron Valley. It was all rice paddies, and down both sides was mountain. One side was the 37th, and the 6th was their objective was Manila, to take Manila. We were on the left side to protect the flank. What they didn't know was that the Army didn't know that the Japanese had the Japanese Second Armored Division there. They didn't know. They got stranded. They were supposed to go to Lacey. But Lacey ended, so they were stranded. We ran into the Japanese Second Armored Division. So we didn't even know they were there till we started seeing the tanks, you know what I mean? And so we ran into them, and then our first real combat was one of our outposts is January. We landed there. I think it was about the 10th of January. So the Japs were backing up. We were following them up. First, we got organized on the beaches to get set. You know what I mean? So for the push, what we were going to do, we got briefed, and we were going to keep on the left flank so they couldn't cut into the flanks of the other side that going towards Manila. So we ran into the Japanese Second Armored Division, and Company E had one outpost overrun. 8 guys were killed, were overrun. But there was a battle. We had a battle with them, and we killed. I guess there was I counted about 70 bodies, dead Jap, and so. But there was still more Japs around. We had to get them, you know. So this fighting was around a little bitty town called Pale, and a little town called Pot and Pale. These little towns, little villages, they call barrios. That's what they call them, B-A-R-R-I-O. That's what they call them, barrio. It'd be just a couple of huts, and they could give it a name. So we crossed. My platoon crossed the Pale River and started going south to wipe out the Japs that were left in there. It was brushy, bamboo and everything else. We had thick bit, and we got fire. So with the ground, we started firing back, you know, and there was a big clump of bamboo in front of me, you know, I guess about 50 yards. And we kept firing. The firing went on for about 15 minutes. Then the claw would advance again, you know what I mean? So I started advancing again. I was on the left side of the bamboo clump, and I saw these feet sticking out, these Japanese leggings, you know what I mean? So we circled, and there was a pile of Japs laying there. They was going to charge. We didn't even know they were there. They was going to charge us until we fired through this clump of bamboo. I thought there was 5 or 6 of them, but there was about 80 dead ones popped. I told Claude, I said, there's about 7 or 8 dead ones back here. He says, make sure they got a hole in them. Got a hole in them. They were shot to pieces, you know what I mean? And they were awful. They shot through the head. My God, you know what I mean? I knew they were all dead, you know. So we kept on pushing, and all of a sudden we came to a clearing, and there was a house there, and we saw a stick come up with a white flag on it. You know, don't take no prisoners. That was the idea. Don't take no prisoners. So our Sergeant Papikastas didn't trust the Japs to surrender. He says, we'll kill them from here, you know what I mean? And my Sergeant Clawwitter says, no, he says, order was to try and take prisoners. And there was a house, the house was like this, there was no windows, everything was on the east side, and we were on the northwest side. And so Claude Witter come running up, he says, Kraly, you and Padula, Billy Padula, Italian kid from Chicago, he says, fix your bayonets, go in there, tear a hole in there and see what the hell's inside there. It was stood about this high on post. So I sprinted to the north side, and Billy ran around to the other side. I guess the whole thing was about 20 foot by 20 foot. I tore a big hole in it with my bayonet, you know what I mean? And there was 4 wounded laying on the floor, and there was a guy standing in a corner, and I had him covered, and he was an officer. And I could see Billy on the other side. He tore a big hole. I hollered at him. Cover the ones on the floor. I got this one in the corner. I knew he was an officer. I saw his brace and everything else. So my sergeant came running up, and he went in there and brought him out. And brought him out the thing. Got him out outside, and I was on the other side watching a guard this Japanese officer. I didn't know what he was. I knew he was an officer, but he had his hands down. He wouldn't. I was hollering with my bayonet, up, up, get your hands up. He was like this. So, like I gave him a thrust with my band, his hands went up. You know what I mean? He put his hands up, and I was on the other side with him, and Papa Casas, my squad, was on the other side. He says, "Hey, Kraly, get your butt over here." He says, "I'm gonna kill every one of them," you know. And Clawwood, they had an argument about killing the prisoners. So Clawwood says, "We can't kill prisoners." He went to order was to take prisoners. There's an argument between my squad leader and my assistant squad leader, Pappy Costas. Sergeant James Papp, he was from Chicago too. He used to play football for University of Illinois. And he was a hell of a sergeant. They had this argument, so this Pignano says, he says, "If Pappy fires, we all fire." You know what I mean? So our lieutenant came up then, Lieutenant Drake. He was like, oh, he was a hell of a nice guy. We just got him in June. He was from Mangum, Oklahoma. He graduated from University of Oklahoma. He was very athletic as on the wrestling, and he was one of the best officers you could ever see. He says, he came up, he says, no, we can't kill prisoners. He says, he saves their lives. Everybody's shot. I'll tell you, I gotta admit, if they'd have fired, I would have fired too, because it was just like family. He's trying to, you know.
How long after that incident did you get injured?
Oh, this was only on about the 19th of January. I didn't get injured till February 23rd. So they called up a guy, took the prisoners back, and we completed cleaning out these caves and everything else, and rejoined our company, you know. And I asked Dr. Captain Edenfield, I said, "What the hell? Who the hell was that officer?" He says, "He was a major." I didn't know what he was, you know what I mean? But he told me, I said, "I almost shot him." He said, "Oh, I'm glad you didn't." You know, so we continue our advance south, and we was fighting at San Manuel, Ben Lonen. The Japanese had tanks, they dug in tanks. We had to go in after the tanks. And my best friend, Bob Kerr, got killed there January 28th. He was killed. Japs made a final banzai, and his position was overrun. He was killed. And they took the town. We took the town. I think there was about 38 or 39 Jap tanks knocked out there. And we continued south. We crossed the Agno River, and we was right at the foothill of the mountain, of the Carabola Mountains, protecting our left flank while these other guys were going down towards General Yamashita was trying to get his troops out of the valley up into the mountains, you know what I mean? Where he could make a defense, you know. There was only one highway going up north to the, called Highway 5, if you wanted to call it a highway. It was more like an alley, you know, and so it was south of us at San Jose, and our mission was to stop them from going up there. But we had to take these down first, you know what I mean? We crossed the Agno River, come to Santa Maria, And the Filipino scout come up. He says, he says there was 7 Jap tanks in Santa Maria. So we went looking for the tanks. Was advancing that from tree to tree and everything else. My squad, you know what I mean? And we came to this park, and all of a sudden we hear music. I couldn't believe it. You know what I mean? And pretty soon here comes about a dozen, 20 or 30 Filipinos with a big American flag playing the Star-Spangled Banner. I almost fainted. We was in this park, you know, and they told us that the Japs had take off. They left the town, had gone south. Gone south. We were still chasing them. So we were still chasing them till they stopped at a town called Umagan. And there was we had a battle for Umagan. And so what got me was we had this B-25 Mitchell bombers. They used to be built down in Fairfax, you know. So before we made the attack, we had about 18 these B-25s come in, low level. They dropped bombs, parachute bombs, you know. And we was on the hillside watching before we made our attack on Umagan. And I told my buddy, he's a Polish guy from Newark, New Jersey, Grablowski. I said, hey, Grablowski, them B-25s, you know what? One of them might have been built in Kansas City. He said, hey, Kraly, them damn things were built in Kansas City, they wouldn't get off the ground. That's what he told me, you know. So they wouldn't get off the ground, you know. So we made our attack on the circle around Umagan, and the Japs came south, marching, trying to get out of there. We didn't encircle them, but while we were encircling, we got ambushed. First thing I knew, see, everybody carried 2 canteens of water, but we were running out. We'd been marching already from about 2 o'clock in the morning. This was about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And so my squad was to drop the rifles. We was on the rear guard while our 35th was ahead, so we couldn't be ambushed from the side. All of a sudden, we got a burst of machine gun right over our heads. We hit the ground, but our rifles were still about 15 feet away. So we couldn't get up to our rifles. Our sergeant told us, he said, spread out, spread out. So every time they said, pop, 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 we'd crawl over to the next rice paddy. It had little walls like this built, you know. So we made our way to crawl to a big rice paddy. Well, a rice stack. Well, there was a guy from Connecticut that was there, and about 4 of us, and one other guy, Apache Indian called Squin Timken. He was in my first squad. He was in a 3rd platoon, but in the first squad we used to call him Squinty. He was Apache Indian. We all made it to this, but the Japs had spotted us. They fired as soon as the rice stack. I knew they wouldn't penetrate, but they set the damn thing on fire. They set the thing on fire. And so we did, and then all of a sudden, from down the road, you could feel it. I heard that our machine guns firing, different sounds. This guy that had come back with one of our light machine guns, they were firing on the Japs out in the field. It's Donald Locher. He used to sleep next to me at Camp Roberts, was the gunner. He killed 7 of them, and they had this Nambu light machine gun to knock out that machine gun. And our sergeant says, up to get the rifles quick. We jumped to grab our equipment, and there was a ditch. And the Japs were running back, taking off across the front. So we were firing at them, and they were running for the cover. It's like a jack in a box, you know what I mean? I admit, I never fired we took up the triggers black first, you know. And so they took off, and then we moved on to catch up with our what called it. They were still going down the road. We were to cut the Japs off between Yucatan and this town called San Road. And we did cut the road. We cut on the other side. We dug in on the right side, and the rest of the company dug in on the other side. And we had two anti-tank guns on each side, firing what they call canister. Did you ever hear of it? Well, it's a long shell, looks like a shotgun shell. So we had a forward observer. He says, the Japs are coming down the road. It was at night. It was about 12 o'clock at night. He said, Japs are coming down the road. The officer says, nobody fires. The canister, the 37s fires first, and then we fire, you know. And so they did come down. Woo, they cut off. Pretty soon you hear, poof, behind me, a mortar, poof, a flare goes up. Everything was just like daylight. We were firing like crazy, you know. After about 15 minutes, it was quiet, you know. All the firing stopped, you know what I mean. So we didn't know what would happen. Next morning, we went up and found dead Japs along the road and everything else. I'll be damned if one of them didn't get up, tried to run up, and somebody shot him again. You know what I mean? He got up halfway, and then he got shot again. I don't know. I guess there must have been about 30, 40 dead ones up along the road. You know. Mm-hmm. So.
Well, tell me about February the 28th. What day did you get injured? February
23rd.
Tell me about February 23rd, how you got injured.
We had advanced all the way down to a town called Rizal. Did you ever hear that where they relieved those prisoners from that camp?
Cabanatuan, yes.
Well, Rizal was just about 8 miles northeast of it. Rizal. It was by the cutoff of the mountains, you know. Yeah, we were killing Japs left and right. They were trying to get out. We'd wait for them. Well, so we started up into the mountains, and that was about February 18th. February 18th, started up into the mountain. And the Japs would always have the next hill. We took hill after hill. So we came to this one place. The Japs had abandoned all their ammunition. It was stacked up along the road. So that night they tried to infiltrate, and we beat them back. So we all come down to the road again. What were we going to do? And the Jats, Claude Whitaker was, my sergeant was gone. My sergeant, Papacostas, he had been already killed at La Peo at another battle. So we didn't have no officers. Our officers, we had 2 officers left. The rest of it had been either killed or wounded, you know. And so I was eating my cave rash, and Claude Whitaker come up and told me, he says, Kraly says, we're going to have to go up to the hill first, see if the Japs are still up there, or if they take off, or we're going to have to attack. So there was a guy. My sergeant Clawwater was still alive. My assistant Clawwater had been killed already in another battle we were in, and so there was my Clawwater, May, and the guy by the name of Sands, Earl Sands. It's a young guy, just like me, from Minnesota. I took the lead because the scout. I went first, and it was foggy up the hill, you know, getting up to the ridge. I was running along there. We got up to the top of the ridge, and it was foggy, and we didn't think anything was wrong. All of a sudden, we heard noise and everything else, and here was this Jap right in front of us. I would, if I could have had a chance, I'd have gone back. But if we'd moved, they would see us, you know what I mean? So what happened was they forced us to fire on them. They forced us to fire on them because they were going to walk right over them. Guy was carrying a Nambu light machine gun, and they were like from here to the corner from us, you know. They would have seen us, you know. So the minute we opened fire, all hell broke loose from fire from all sides, you know. So Clover says, pull back, pull back. I mean, well, I kept firing. I had 4 hand grenades through the grenade. And Clover, we were pulling back, and Clover got hit right on the right side of his head. Looked like somebody branded him with a poker, knocked him down, you know. I was looking, he was only about from here to the window from me, you know, but he was able to crawl back, you know. But Sands got hit and he was killed. And so I got up, stepped back, I was firing, and all of a sudden I got hit, and I went down, you know. I thought I was hit through the legs. I didn't know I got one through here. And I was going to pick myself up with my rifle, put the butt of my rifle, pull myself up. Then my rifle, stock of my rifle had been shot in half. It was hanging by the sling. Just hanging by the sling. I couldn't move. The guys from the first platoon, they were about 200 yards down, came down, grabbed me by the arms, and were dragging me out, you know what I mean? Claw was able to crawl out, but they drugged me out. I just stopped, you're killing me. So they're dragging me. So one guy took off his jacket and put it up underneath me. So they half lifted me and half drugged me down behind the lines, you know what I mean? Down, so they put me on a litter so they could get me to the aid station, you know. So
So did they, at the aid station, did they operate on you then? Or
No,
they sent you back?
No, they didn't operate on me. They operated, the first thing they did, they find out who the hell you are, who to notify. What the hell you asking me? I'm on a litter there. Of course, they shot me full of morphine, you know what I mean? Asking me questions, you know, how old are you and all. I said, Jesus Christ, you know what I mean? And then they put me in an ambulance. They put Clawwater, I, and Sands. I didn't know it. I was on the top, well, and Sands was underneath, but he was dead. I didn't know it. My friend was dead. And Clawwater was on the other side. He never could hear from that. He looked like somebody branded him. You know. So they took me someplace out on a Chilton Road on a jail park, correct. And I was burning it, you couldn't take no water. So this medic was just wet my lips, you know what I mean? And they took me down to this station, you know. Took me in, and doctor come looked at me and everything else. He said, "Can you move?" I said, "No." He bent his neck down. He said, "Put your arms around me," around my neck. And I don't know why. He said, "I'll try to pull you up." And he said, I couldn't move. Then he says, "Preparing for operation," you know. So they started me up, and they put that on my nose. He said, "Start counting from 100. I think I got to 93. That was it.
And that was at a hospital?
That was not a hospital.
That was the aid station?
That was the operating station.
Yeah, I see.
Yeah.
And then you got through with that, and then they sent you to a hospital then?
They sent me to. I didn't know they operated on me in the afternoon. I woke up at night. I was in a hospital. I didn't know where the hell I was at. You know what I mean? And
where were you?
Huh?
Where were you?
I was still on Luzon.
Okay.
You know.
In a hospital.
I was on Luzon, and it was raining like hell, and the tent was threatening to fall down. So they picked us up, and they took us in the schoolhouse. And of course, I had tube stuff on my arm, tube stuck up my nose, and so I was there in that hospital for about, I guess, about a week, and then they were going to fly me south, so they put me in one of them little bitty Piper Cubs with the pilot, and they put the litter right behind you. Then you take off. They flew me down by Clark Field, and then they had a waiting station there, waiting for one of these big transports to come in.
And so they flew you out of Clark Field. Where did you go to a hospital?
At Lacey.
At Leyte.
Lacey.
And you were there when the war ended?
Do what?
Were you there when the war ended?
Yeah, the wars that had ended there, they were operating on me. I had about 5 operations. They couldn't operate because I was bleeding too bad. They just stuffed me in like a turkey, you know what I mean? You know, and the worst part about it is bandages on my legs. They had changed the damn things. So the doctor down there, I still had that, what to call it, I could finally eat though. They made me some like mashed potatoes and gravy. I ate it, and it felt like I was swallowing gravel, honest to God. Oh, Jesus Christ. Cleared down to my stomach. And then this doctor looked at a wound in my legs and said, Jesus Christ, everything. He says, look, he said, I'm going to pour this peroxide on there. He says, I'm going to come back about half an hour, I'm going to yank them bandages off. So he came back, about half an hour, I was laying on the bed there, and all the nurses there, he said, he got one of them gauze sticks, wraps the face, he put that in the mouth, he says, clamp down on this and hold on to the bed. So I did, and he just yanked them off, you know what I mean? Just yanked them off, and had them big holes in my legs. He just yanked the damn things off, you know. And so they would take me out to the operating. I was knocked unconscious so many ways. I got shots in my arms that knocked me out. I had ether. I don't know how many times I had 2 operations on the Lacey. Then they put me on a hospital ship, the Mercy. And they took me down to Hollandia. There's a big hospital there. So that was a modern thing.
Okay, the war is over. August 15th, 1945, the war was over, but you were still hurting big time. So you went down to Hollandia, right?
Yeah, Hollandia was a big hospital.
And from Hollandia...
It was all Quonset huts, you know.
Did they send you back to the States, to a hospital?
No. I couldn't walk. I couldn't do that. I couldn't get out. I couldn't walk. I couldn't do that. Couldn't do nothing. They still hadn't. I was still open. You know what I mean? My stomach was still open. They just had, so they took me down to Hollandia, and I had some more operations down there. And finally, the last operation, they closed me up. They closed me up. I was in Hollandia. And that was when President Roosevelt died.
April the 12th, 1945.
Yeah, I'll never forget. Because the nurses came down there.
The war wasn't over
crying.
yet. Okay.
Yeah, they were crying that Roosevelt had died, you know what I mean?
Yes.
And my stomach was killing me. And a little bitty paratrooper across the bed from me, he got shot through the leg when he jumped on Corregidor, or fighting on Corregidor. And the colonel, the head of the came by, and he told the colonel, you better look at Kraly, he's really hurting. And he came over and looked at my stomach. I was all sewed up. He pushed me. He says, you got internal bleeding. He said, we're going to have to operate again. They had to take me back up again to prepare for an emergency operation. Well, they took me back up again.
How did you finally get home?
Well, I'll tell you that. They finally operated on me, you know, and I just, this last time to stop that bleeding on the inside. Okay, I still couldn't walk. The nurse came up and she told me, she says, Kraly, she says, you're going home. She said, there's a catch. This was about April 24th.
Okay,
She said,
April
"There's a
of
ship."
45, the war's not over.
He said, there's a ship going home, but there's no litter patients. You have to walk on. You get what I mean? I had to walk. I said, this will help you get up, and so you could walk on, you know what I mean? So they helped me up. First they got me in a wheelchair, and I was on the wheelchair and everything else. This is Hollandia, it had paves, everything was paved. You could go around with a wheelchair. And then after a while, they got me up, put me on crutches, where I could on crutches. And that was about April 29th or something, and the ship was going to leave about the 10th of May. So you had to walk on. And about the first of May, I was walking.
You were going to make that ship.
You can walk around here, we're going to take you out, put you down by the port where the ship is at, you know what I mean? So you can walk. So I stood down there about 6 days, rested, getting set to walk on that ship. I walked on that ship.
So you got on the ship, and they took you, where'd you come into the States?
Yeah.
Where?
They took me to the Letterman's Hospital, San Francisco.
And how long were you there?
I was there. They was examining me there because I was having these. I couldn't stand up because the tendinitis was affecting my balance. So I stood there about I guess about 2 weeks, and then they took us all on. They put us on a hospital train. They had big Red Crosses, and we went up to the Redwoods, a beautiful country, up to Fort Lewis Madigan Hospital, Fort Lewis, Washington. And so they took me to the hospital there, and I stood there getting treatment, and then the war ended. The war had already ended. I was sitting in the library. Somebody said they dropped the atom bomb. I said, what the hell's an atom bomb? You know what I mean? Nobody even knew what an atom bomb was.
Yeah, the first bomb was dropped on August the 6th on Hiroshima.
Yeah.
The second bomb we dropped on August the 9th.
Yeah.
The Japs still didn't
I was in a hospital.
Finally surrendered on August the 15th. Well, when did you get out of the hospital?
Yeah.
When did you get out?
Well, I still didn't get out till after the war, September 10th. You know what I mean?
September
I
the
wanted
10th.
to get out. They weren't going to let me out.
So September 10th, you came home.
Yeah, I went home. I told this Catholic chaplain came along. I'm a Catholic. I said, look, I think, Father, I think I can make it home. He says, I'll talk to him. So he went up to talk to the medical, and these 3 colonels were sitting there, all doctors. They questioned me and everything else about this. Your knee's still bad. I said, sir, I can make it home and everything. And this one doctor says, he's been through enough. I think he can make it home just fine.
And you did?
Yeah, and he did. And that's on my papers. You can see it's from Madigan Hospital, Fort Lewis, Washington.
When you got home, okay, you got home, and what kind of work have you done? You had to come home and get a job. What kind of work have you been doing?
Well, I couldn't work. I couldn't hardly walk. I couldn't do nothing. They put me on just a complete disability. They were supporting me, you know what I mean? They were sending me $115 a month. They didn't want me to do nothing. I had a report sometime. They call it Eisenhower now, but it was Wadsworth at that
Yes,
time.
right.
Yeah,
right.
up at what's it called? I had to go up there, you know.
But you
And
finally,
so-
you finally got work, though, didn't you? You worked with the post office.
Yeah,
How long did you work with the post office?
I started working for the post office in 1950 to 1980.
So you had 30 years, plus they gave you credit for your military service.
Yeah,
and you retired in 1980.
yeah,
And have you worked any since then?
yeah. Do what?
Have you worked any since 1980?
Have I worked? No, I just didn't do a lot of voluntary services at the hospital.
Good.
That's just about. I still have problems. I still have to take Beclizine to keep my balance. If I
Yeah.
don't take Beclizine,
Yeah.
if I sit down like this, it seems normal. But when you get up, that's when everything starts to spin.
Tell me about your family. You married Susan, and how many children did you have?
Who?
Children. How many children do you have?
I have Stevie, Johnny, Kimberly, and Angelique. 4.
Where does Stevie live today?
He works in medical stuff over at the Children's Mercy Hospital in
Okay, so he lives here in Kansas City. How about John?
John works for Pitney Bowes.
Here in Kansas City?
It's in Johnson County.
Yeah, in the Kansas City
Yeah,
area.
Yeah.
And how about your number one daughter?
Kimberly, she works with these there business places, the computers. I don't know what they call them. It's a big company that works with the business companies, you know.
Here in
And Angelique works with social services. She goes around for the elderly to tell them if they need any needs, what their rights are. You know, get what I mean?
Yeah, that's good.
That's
So
what
you
she
have
can
4
do.
children. How many grandchildren?
Well, I got 2 grandchildren.
What are their names?
Mikey and Azila.
Got a girl and a boy.
The 2 boys.
2 boys. How about the great grandchildren?
Well, I would call these great grandsons. The only grandchildren I had at that time was Amber. These others are 2 boys or great grandchildren.
I see. Great.
They're the sons of Amber.
Of Amber.
Yeah,
Good. Good.
yeah,
Good.
yeah. And Angelique works for social services. She goes for the elderly.
That's good.
For the elderly. She goes around and tells them their right, what they need. A lot of them, she said, a lot of them need so much help, they don't know what's up. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Yeah.
John, you've got 2 or 3 pictures. Let's show them. Here's a great shot of John in his Army uniform, proud member of the 25th Infantry Division, 35th Regiment of the United States Army. And here's a great shot. There's John on the right, his brother Charlie on the left. Did Charlie get injured? Did Charlie get injured during the war?
No.
Okay. And there's your father in the middle. And you had 11 kids in the family, 5 boys, all of whom served their country in the military in World War II and in Korea. And here's a great shot of the Kraly family. It was taken a year before John was born. This is 1923. And there's John's father and John's mother, married in Croatia, came over to America, built a great life for their family, and all of their sons served Uncle Sam in the military. What a great family story. John, you served your country well. I want to thank you for this interview. and I want to thank you for what you did for our country. Tell me one more time what your daddy, who was a immigrant from Croatia, along with your mother, had 11 children. You're a first-generation American. What did your daddy say to you when you were getting ready to go to war?
He told me, Johnny, I turned my head and says, what, Pop? He said, he pointed his finger right at me, just like this. He says, don't disgrace the family.
And you didn't.
And I didn't.
You served the country well. Thank you.
I tried my best.
And it was good enough. Thank you very much.
I did. But I always think about the good leadership I had. You know, but like I said, my Sergeant McGaha won the Congress of his Medal of Honor. Every time I turned around, he ran through machine gun fire. I told him, don't come that way, they got a machine gun fire. He got hit through the leg, I bandaged him up. So, and my lieutenant, Drake, got his hand shot off and his legs kind of, drug us in the ditch. We had a hell of a fight with him, you know what I mean?
Okay, and your sergeant won the Medal of Honor?
Yeah.
For his heroic action.
That's right, Charles McGaha.
And you were proud to be in his company.
Right.
And served well.
He was a great sergeant.
John, thank you very much.
Yeah.
And here's PFC John Kraly, very proud to have served in the 25th Infantry Division during World War II, serving his country with great distinction.